There are probably two major changes that come to your mind when you think of the iPhone 14, the new pill cutout and the 48 megapixel camera, both of which I covered in detail in our past videos. But it turns out that there are more changes that Apple's working on, including some I am personally very excited about. According to a recent report by Mark Gurman, Apple is adding support for an always-on display in iOS 16, which would then work on the iPhone 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max. Oh man, this has literally been my #1 requested feature for so many years now. And you're probably all tired of me saying how much I love always-on Android, but I really do. The fact that I don't have to unlock my phone to see what I've missed, and instead I can just glance at it, is a game changer for me. And this new always-on mode could have a very unique look to it, with Mark Gurman even referring to wallpapers that have widget-like capabilities, likely different always-on faces. But alright, now you're all probably wondering, why did it take Apple so long to add always on, when Samsung, for example, has had it since 2016, that is 6 years ago? Well, I think that it was a decision that Apple made in order to give their users as much battery life as possible. When Samsung introduced the S7, their first always-on display phone, it had two fundamental technologies which the iPhone 7 at that time lacked. It had a massive 3000 mAh battery compared to the 1960 that the iPhone 7 had, and then it also had an always-on display compared to LCD. And while LG has managed to add always-on to LCD-based phones, OLED is much preferred in order to keep battery usage as low as possible. Apple only switched to OLED in 2017, which was also when iPhones had a reputation of always needing a charger. The first iPhone with a great battery life was the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The iPhone 12 line was actually a downgrade due to the new design and the battery is actually getting smaller. And the 13 is really when I can definitely say that the battery life is very good across all models. My 13 Pro can easily last me for a day and a half with regular usage, which is close to twice as long as my 12 Pro. The 13 Pros also introduced ProMotion and the ability to drop their refresh rate to as low as 10 Hz. So if anything, Apple could have and should have added always on with the iPhone 13 Pros, which by the way is actually something that Mark Gurman says that Apple was aiming to do. The good news is that according to Russ Young, he's expecting the iPhone 14 Pros to be able to go to as low as 1 Hz, matching the Apple Watch's refresh rate, which does indeed have an always-on display. So in theory, Apple could offer always-on functionality on the 13 Pros too through a software update. It's just that this would affect the battery life more than on the 14s. Although, knowing Apple, they just won't. And with an always-on display, the 14 Pro models would be very different from the regulars. We already know that only the Pros will be getting the pill plus hole cutout. We also know that only the Pros will be getting that major 48 megapixel camera upgrade. And what is even more shocking is that for the first time since the iPhone 3G, Apple is not expected to be updating the chips in the regular iPhone 14s. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, only the Pro models would get the A16 chip, with the non-Pros keeping the A15. Now, this is just my personal prediction, but I do believe that Apple will still call the A15 chip inside the iPhone 14 the A16, and then the one inside the 14 Pros the A16 Pro. This is mostly so that the general public doesn't think that the regular 14 is just a rebranded 13, which, to be honest, it kind of is, but, you know, they need sales, so yeah. There will be some differences from the 13 to the 14 though. I don't know how many of you know this, but there are two versions of the A15 chip inside the iPhone 13s. One is the regular version with a 5-core GPU that's inside the iPhone 13 Pros, and the other is a bin version with a 4-core GPU that's inside the iPhone 13s. And between the two, there's actually a 12% performance difference, which is quite significant. So technically, by Apple using the unbinned A15 inside the iPhone 14, users would still get a performance bump from the regular 13. Speaking of bumps, if you want to bump your internet security, check out NordVPN, our sponsor for this video. It now features a built-in threat protection feature that 1. Blocks trackers from every website to keep you anonymous, 2. Blocks those malicious and pesky ads that you see all over the web, and 3. Blocks harmful websites that may contain dangerous malware. Threat protection is included for free for every NordVPN user. NordVPN also includes a dark web monitor that scans the web for your leaked data, and it also lets you create custom presets optimized for downloading, browsing, and more. Go to nordvpn.com/ZOTVPN or click the link below for an exclusive discount and a bonus. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, you can try Nord without any risks. And now, back to the video, what about the A16 Pro? What sort of performance improvements do we expect to see here? Well, recent rumors are saying that the A16 Pro will have a slightly faster CPU, newer LPDDR5 memory, and a better GPU. It would still be manufactured on the same 5nm process that the A15 and A14 were manufactured on, with Apple reserving the new 3nm process for that Apple M2 chip. But okay, going back to the regular 14, aside from that 12% GPU bump, do we get any other changes? Well, as you might have heard by now, we are also getting more RAM, 6GB instead of 4, now matching the Pro models, which I think is what will make the biggest difference between using a 13 and using a 14. And according to Ming-Chi Kuo, all 4 models of the iPhone 14 would feature an upgraded front-facing camera, with a larger f1.9 aperture from the f2.2, as well as autofocus support. The larger aperture would not only allow for better low-light performance, but it would also give us more depth of field, allowing us to get much closer or much further away from it, whilst keeping the image sharp and the background blurred out. And Mark Gurman has also once again hinted at the idea of the iPhone 14 getting satellite SOS support, something that I think would be a big deal for hikers and adventurers. But other than that, this is mostly it, at least according to all the leaks and rumors. The iPhone 14 won't be getting any other changes aside from maybe a new color. A new purple, by the way, has actually been rumored for both the 14 and the 14 Pro. The 12 Pro did have a purple though, so I guess that Apple could just take that and make it darker to change it up a bit. I do think that this would look awesome on the Pro model with that purple stainless steel frame. Of course, that the biggest change that a regular 14 would be getting is that new 14 Max model, which I think is a brilliant idea. Speaking of brilliant ideas, just subscribe, as we're actually going to have a hands-on video with some iPhone 14 dummy units very soon. Now, we know that people want large screen phones, and especially ones with all-day battery lives. So if Apple can sell a 14 Pro Max, but with a couple of downgrades while still keeping that all-day battery life, I think that this might just be Apple's best-selling iPhone 14 model. Unless it's delayed, which according to a fresh report, it might just be the case, as the iPhone 14 Max's production is currently around 3 weeks behind schedule. Although, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple has not changed the actual release schedule for the 14 Max. Interesting enough, Russ Young says that the iPhone 14 Max panel shipments have always been behind schedule, and he thinks that it might be because of the lower than usual sales that Apple is expecting for this model. Which, again, I still believe that this model will actually sell best. But yeah, do let me know in the comments if you guys agree. Now, speaking of the iPhone 14's display, in one of our previous videos, I mentioned how Apple was going to use Bowie as the third display manufacturer alongside Samsung and LG. Well, as of right now, that is no longer the case, as Apple seems to have suddenly dropped Bowie. What happened was that Apple had some very high requirements for their displays, which Bowie was struggling to meet as a newcomer to the display scene. They did manage to meet them in the end, reason why Apple decided to go ahead with Bowie, but they were struggling to meet the production demands. So they decided to drop the quality of the panels without telling Apple in order to improve the yield. Apple then found out about this and they paused all the orders, and they're now considering giving all of them to Samsung and LG. I do applaud Apple for doing this. It would cost them more money to go with Samsung and LG, but at least the display quality won't have to suffer. And I gotta say, I am genuinely excited for the iPhone 14 Pro models. We're getting a ton of upgrades, with the 14 Pro being as much of a change as going from the iPhone 11 to the iPhone 12, at least in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Do you plan on upgrading to the 14 Pro, or are you going to wait for the even bigger iPhone 15 upgrade, on which we've actually done a video right here? And if you want to see different types of videos, check out our brand new ZONEofTECH Shorts channel. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.